Hello and welcome to a new video. Today I am going to be talking about Agony and specifically what I think could have been done or should have been changed that wouldn't make the game perfect or stupendous or anything, but I think would have made the game at least a little bit more enjoyable to play and would have helped mitigate some of the negative aspects that it has become plagued with. I should mention that this footage is from me playing the demo and not the final game. Now obviously hindsight is 2020. It'll do no good for me just to say, oh, if I was making the game I would have done this, and that. In fact, I probably would have made a worse game than the one they made. But having played the game, I do think there are some ideas they had about how the gameplay should go that might have seemed like a cool idea in concept, but didn't really work out in execution. Now the first big problem is the stealth. Agony at its core is a hide-and-seek horror game, similar to Amnesia: The Dark Descent, Outlast, and Alien Isolation, where the premise is the character you're playing as is weak and defenseless against the enemies that plague the area. So rather than fighting the enemies, you want to sneak around them. And that's all well and good. That's an aspect of those other games as well, and were highly received by gamers and critics alike. Now, other than sneaking around, which the character is doing here, there's also holding your breath, which I think has shown itself to be a redundant mechanic. Your character is already crouched down, moving as slowly as possible, trying to make as little noise as possible. And holding your breath is just supposed to be an additional not making any noise. So what sense does it make to have this sort of limitation on your character's movement for the sake of not making noise, since the majority of the creatures in the game don't even have eyes? So it's obviously going to be based upon noise. So what sense does it make to have that, but also an additional thing you have to do to not make noise? I think if the breath holding mechanic wasn't in the game, or was just tied to sneaking around and maybe you can only sneak for a short while, that would have helped make it a little bit better, maybe not feel so redundant, or maybe just feel more tied together in the latter case. But right now, it just comes to question, why even bother have the sneaking around if it's completely useless unless you also hold your breath? At that point, just running by the monsters and hoping the hell you're able to get away in time seems like a much more viable and much more desirable option, and that's clearly not what the developers intended the game to be like. So that's the first thing. The second thing I think could have been improved upon is the usage of the torches. The torches have a few uses in the game. First of all, they're supposed to help you see around you if the area is too dark. Second, they can be used to burn wooden fences or certain plants that would otherwise prevent access to hidden parts of the game or secret areas you can go to. And third, they can be used to distract the creatures. However, there's a downside to the torches. If you're holding one, the creatures will be attracted to you. Now, I personally feel as if the torches could have used a greater overhaul. For example, I think it would have been a lot better if the torches were a useful tool against the creatures, not to just throw and get them away, but maybe to swing at them, which your character can do. He can swing a torch, which would deter them. There could be two possible avenues for that. The first would be similar to, say, the flamethrower in Alien Isolation, where it has a limited number of uses, but it can deter any of the creatures that are coming after you away for a short amount of time. Alternatively, it could have been used something like the bottles in The Evil Within 2, where when one of the creatures latches onto you, the torch can act as sort of like a one-use get out of jail free card, where you can, I don't know, jab it into the creature's face and get out long enough to run away and find a hiding spot. In any case, the game would still retain that whole idea of the character being defenseless, not able to properly fight back, but it also would make the torch, I think, a little bit useful and more desired. Because at the moment, one of the big criticisms that happened or were present when the game first came out was it was too dark and the torches didn't really do anything to help that. You'd be better off just letting your eyes adjust, turning up the gamma, and hoping you're able to see enough of the way through and that there's no monsters lurking around completely invisible. And while being able to burn up fences and plans to access secret areas is quite nice, the game itself, the gameplay, people thought was so bad that sort of deterred them away from wanting to seek out any secret areas. They just want to get it over with, if they were even willing to continue to play. Now, in other games, there are ways to deter the monster even if you are defenseless. In Amnesia, you can pick up stones on the floor and chuck it at the monster to daze it for a few seconds. And in Alien Isolation, there's a flamethrower, and that's just for the invincible alien. For any of the other enemy NPCs, you can kill them outright. So I would argue that being able to stop the monster in its tracks for just a while at least doesn't violate the whole hide-and-seek horror mindset. All things considered, and I will classify this as a tangent, it is odd that your character isn't able to fight back at all, especially considering, spoiler warning, the character you're playing as is King Nimrod, the biblical hunter. He was in fact considered the greatest hunter in his time. So the fact that he's now so defenseless and incapable of helping himself just seems awkward. Like a bit of a wasted opportunity, you can say. Now, this isn't to say that there's no combat at all in the game. There's just none as a human character, the martyr as they're called. You can possess the bodies of demons and be able to attack other demons with those bodies, but I think due to the short amount of time you're actually able to use those demon bodies and just being kicked out, along with the fact that in order to extend the usage you have to kill regular people, meaning that when you do get kicked out, you might be completely shit out of luck as far as being able to find another human body to possess and move onward, is a huge deterrence from using that mechanic. And I don't really think it was the opportunity to use it to its full extent was really implemented well in the game anyways. But that would be a matter of better level design rather than just changing the mechanics. If they did want a balance where you can't just possess a demon and rule over hell with an iron fist as in this new demon body, then maybe have like a limit to how many enemies you can kill, because that would be the great benefit of possessing the demons. You're no longer this defenseless human being. You can actually swipe at some of the other enemies around and put them down, so that when you do go back to being a human, you're in less danger. So limiting the amount of other demons you can kill, be it the spiders that always follow you, or Onoskeluses that are patrolling around, or the shorts that can kill you in one hit, would still entice you to use the demon to get rid of some of those additional enemies, but also would still prevent you from just being overpowered and squashing everything. The big problem here is that these changes wouldn't be solved by just having more time to develop. In fact, Agony has had plenty of time to develop. It's been delayed multiple times. But even if it was delayed 100 times more, I don't think these changes would have been implemented, because these are ideas that extend even before the game was actually a game. These are ideas that stem all the way back to the concept animations Ducktwitch made, the lead developer of the game, to pitch the idea of Agony. I do like the idea of Agony. I think it's an awesome idea to be able to explore around this visceral, far more brutal version of hell than we've ever seen before. To have to avoid demons, to be able to possess them occasionally. But I don't think it was balanced well, and I think that's the big issue with the gameplay, or at least the game mechanics. Now, as I said before, there's issues on top of that. The level design could be improved substantially. There doesn't seem to be a lot of variety with the puzzles. It's basically just try to find this drawing on the wall, hold E to memorize, and then draw it on some missing or some incomplete part of the wall. And of course there's the whole can of worms with censorship. But I do think that those 3 suggestions, if nothing else, would have improved the gameplay enough that even if you didn't particularly like the game, even if it's not your cup of tea, if you're not a fan of hide-and-seek horror games, it wouldn't really be that much of a slog to try to get through. Because at the end of the day, no matter how pretty the graphics are, no matter how cool the idea is, no matter how new and innovative the creature design seems, no matter how sexy the enemy NPCs are, gameplay comes first. There's a reason why they decided to make this Agony the video game, and wasn't Ducktwitch sitting down in front of his computer writing up Agony the book, or trying to pitch the idea to some studio for Agony the movie. It's all quite unfortunate, since I do think the game had an interesting story and a pretty interesting series of lore, and I think if the game did turn out better and was better received, they could have had another game, or maybe even a third game, exploring maybe purgatory or heaven, or seeing if any other deities other than a a Sumerian one that disguised itself throughout the ages as various gods or deities from the Judean Christian mythos exist in this universe. But I don't think we'll be seeing another game in the series. And, it's not like it's not for a good reason either. So I'd like to know what you think could have been done. What do you think should have been changed during the game's development, if it would even be possible? That might make the game less tedious or might have made it more fun to play. Anyways, I guess that concludes the video. I hope I gave you something to think about and otherwise entertained you. Take care.